All right, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 2021-22 Annual General Meeting of the Manitoba Opera. I will call this meeting to order. Thank you. Please note this meeting tonight is being live streamed on the Manitoba Opera YouTube channel. My name is Judith Chambers and I'm the Chair of the Board of Trustees. And we acknowledge that we are gathered on ancestral lands on Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the home and the heartland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories, and we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Michael Bly will be acting as recording secretary for tonight's meeting. And I'd like to begin by introducing the people who will be making remarks this evening. Paul Brooke-Weens will be reading the notice, will read the notice of the annual general meeting. Keith Sinclair, who will present the governance committee report on the slate of nominees. Laura York will present the audited financial statements, and Larry DeRoche, General Director and CEO, will report on the company's activities. I'd now like to have a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Moved by Flavia, seconded by Bill. Are there any questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And the next item is the approval of the minutes from the 2020-2021 AGM. And can I have a motion to accept the minutes? Leona, and seconded by Flavia. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried. Thank you. And number 4 on our agenda is the reading of the notice. I'd like to call upon Paul Brooke-Weens to read the notice of the annual general meeting that was published in the June 18 edition of the Winnipeg Free Press.
Thank you, Judith. Notice is hereby given that the annual general meeting of the Manitoba Opera Association will be held in person at the Centennial Concert Hall's Sound Bites Room, located at 555 Main Street, and live streamed online on Tuesday, July 12th at 5:30 p.m. for the following purposes: the consideration of the annual report of the Chair, Board of Trustees, consideration and approval with or without qualification of the financial statements, the appointment of the auditors, the election of members to the Board of Trustees, and such other business as the Board of Trustees may wish the members to consider. Members wishing to make nominations to the Board of Trustees or to bring matters of business before the general meeting must notify the Secretary of the Board in writing at least 15 days in advance of the meeting, clearly stating the nature of said business. For more information and instructions on how to view the live stream, please contact Kyle Briscoe, Executive Assistant, at 204-957-6361. The general bylaws of Manitoba Opera are available to members upon request.
Thank you, Paul. And number 5 on our agenda, reading of the audited statements. I'd like to call upon Laura York to present the audited financial statements for 2021-2022 fiscal year.
Thank you, Judith. Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to present the audited financial statements for the Manitoba Opera Association for the year 2021-2022 fiscal year ending May 31st, 2022. I'd like to report that the auditors have given Manitoba Opera a clean bill of health again this year, and the company is managing its finances in accordance with accepted practices. The audit was conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers. The auditor's opinion is found on page 1 of the report, Independent Auditor's Report. The opinion states, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the Manitoba Opera Association, Inc., the association, as at May 31st, 2022. The results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. On the balance sheet, Manitoba Opera maintains two funds, the operating and the operating reserve fund, as shown on the balance sheet. As of May 31st, 2022, the current assets improved by $656,803 from $737,947 in fiscal year 2021 to $1,394,750 in fiscal year 2022, mainly due to continued strong fundraising, pandemic-related financial supports, and the booking of expenses relating to the postponement of La Cenerentola to the 22-23 season as prepaid expenses. Current liabilities increased from $281,488 in fiscal year 2021 to $670,153 in fiscal year 2022 due to grants for the next fiscal year being received at the end of fiscal year 2022. Increases in gift certificates due to the postponement of La Cenerentola, and the $60,000 for the Canada Emergency Business Account loan being moved from long-term debt to current. The loan will be repaid by December 31st, 2022, allowing Manitoba Opera to take advantage of the 33% that is forgivable if paid before December 31st, 2023. Long-term debt, which was the Canada Emergency Business Loan, has now been moved into current liabilities. Turning to the statement of operations and fund balances. As of May 31st, 2022, the internal fund transfer of $268,138 was made from the operating fund to the operating reserve fund, leaving the surplus on operations of $5,000. The operating reserve fund now has an accumulated balance of $719,597. Total revenues for fiscal year 2022 were $1,859,451. Operating grants from the Canada Council, the Manitoba Arts Council, Province of Manitoba, and the Winnipeg Arts Council remained the same in fiscal year 2021. Other grants include support from pandemic-related funding, details of which can be found in note number 9. Fundraising from all campaigns was $680,719. Included in this amount is $13,038 that was donated back by patrons for performance tickets, special events, and parking fees. Box office saw season started off with the production of The Telephone, La Voix Humaine. A surge in COVID-19 cases caused the postponement of Cenerentola to the fall of fiscal year 2023. A gala concert replaced this production in April. The overall box office revenues resulted in $82,712, which was an increase of $61,039 from $21,673 in fiscal year 2021. On the expense side of the budget, education expenses increased in response to the pandemic with programs such as the Digital Emerging Artist Program. Production expenses increased by $12,409 from fiscal year 2021 due to the recommencement of live productions with the support of digital programming. Similarly, marketing expenses increased by $37,071 over the prior year due to the return of live performances. Fundraising expenses increased due to the endowment campaign. The biannual Gail Asper Award was also held in fiscal year 2022 after being postponed from fiscal year 2020 due to COVID-19. The overall increase in expenses was $140,534. Although not reflected in the audited financial statements, I'd like to note that other departmental expenses came in, on, or under budget. Endowment Fund. In fiscal year 2022, the endowment fund held at the Winnipeg Foundation grew by $618,104. As of May 31st, the Manitoba Opera Fund has a market value of $1,383,300. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to express our gratitude to the patrons who donated their performance tickets back for tax receipts, the hundreds of donors who gave generously, some making extra gifts, as well as the federal government and provincial government for their pandemic support programs. These combined efforts were key to Manitoba Opera achieving a balanced budget. That concludes my report. If anyone has any questions, Larry will be happy to answer them. I would now like to call for a motion to adopt the financial statements as presented. Moved by Paul, seconded by Robert. Thank you. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried. I would now like to ask for a motion that the firm of PricewaterhouseCoopers be appointed as auditors for the financial year ending May 31st, 2023 at a rate of payment to be approved by the Board of Trustees.
Well, you're the chair. Can we have a motion? So Rob,
Motion for Rob
And seconded by
Jane.
Jane.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried.
And thank you, Laurie. Moving on to item number 7, the chair's report. So good evening, everyone. As my first message as chair of the Board of Trustees to the membership of Manitoba Opera, I'm honored to be here in person with those of you in this room, and of course with those of you who have joined us online today. I have a few thank yous and some key highlights to share with you. First, I want to acknowledge and thank our past chair, Elba Haid, for her leadership in her role as chair, and her support and encouragement for me in my first year as chair. And I want to thank our membership for your trust and your confidence and continued support of the Manitoba Opera during the difficulties we've all experienced throughout the pandemic. And to our board trustees, thank you for your continued dedication, hard work, and focus on the sustainability of Manitoba Opera as we navigated through the uncertainty these last couple of years. I'd also like to thank our retiring board members, Bill Pope and Leona Herzog, for their service on the board and their expertise and guidance and your contributions over the years. You took on your board roles with seriousness, dedication, and grace, and I thank you for that. And of course, my final thank you is to Larry, our General Director and CEO. Larry spent his entire career dedicated to the arts in Manitoba, and we are very fortunate to have him with us at Manitoba Opera for almost 22 years. Larry, through his leadership and with the support of the amazing staff at the Manitoba Opera, recognized through the pandemic and as well as we move into this new post-pandemic era, how important it is to continue performing to maintain a sense of community, interaction, and social connection with our audience. So thank you, Larry. And thank you to the Manitoba Opera staff for your resilience and your dedication to the Manitoba Opera. And I'll share a few highlights of our 21-22 season. As we slowly return to live performances after being postponed by a year, we gathered in September of 21 to honor the second recipient of the Gail Asper Award, Tanis Richardson, for her exemplary charitable spirit and her community leadership. The Telephone and La Voix Humaine in November 22 marked a return to performing for live audience. The two one-act operas were on a smaller scale than usual, but were performed for a smaller, socially distanced audience, marking the Manitoba Opera debut of conductor Naomi Wu. And our gala concert in April of 22 brought together some of the finest voices in Canada, and the return of Tyrone Patterson to conduct the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra for the first time since November 2019. And throughout all of this, the board and the staff worked diligently to keep the artists, crew, and patrons safe at all events and performances. We also enhanced our digital programming. 2 opera storytime videos were translated into French and Tagalog, and a French-speaking singer was available to provide the I Love to Read sessions in French in February for the first time. We held a digital pre-show chat featuring director Jacqueline Lowen talking about our fall production of The Telephone and La Voix Humaine, which was offered in place of the usual in-person chats in the concert hall. and our Digital Emerging Artists Alumni Showcase Series was held in late spring with live video interviews of the artists across the country sharing their own artistic projects. And we held opera class anywhere, using Zoom and open broadcast software with studio quality microphones, lights, and cameras to connect an opera singer from Winnipeg to classrooms in Thompson and Brandon. The first time this has ever been possible. And of course, for the first time, our AGM is being live streamed to audiences at home. Hello, everybody at home. And as we look back at our 21-22 season, it's important to thank our sponsors and donors. We're grateful to BMO, who is once again our 21-22 presenting sponsor. Our sincerest thanks to our season corporate sponsors, especially the Richardson Foundation, the Winnipeg Foundation, and the Gail Asper Foundation. We thank our performance sponsors, IG Wealth Management, Johnston Group, and Taylor McCaffrey Lawyers. And thank you to our educator program sponsors, especially Canada Life, our leading education and community engagement sponsor, as well as TELUS and RBC for supporting the Emerging Artists Program. Thank you to our public funders, the Canada Council for the Arts, Manitoba Arts Council, and the Winnipeg Arts Council. My final remarks look to the future of the Manitoba Opera. The 22-23 season marks our 50th year, and in recognition of this, we have launched a historic campaign, The Power of Voice, to ensure the Manitoba Opera's long-term growth and sustainability stays intact. Our goal is to provide a total of $10 million to the A. Care Twaddle and Robert H. Thorlickson Manitoba Opera Endowment Fund, held at the Winnipeg Foundation. $5 million from private donations will be supported by matching funds from the Canadian Heritage and Winnipeg Foundation, which will allow us to generate annual income to reach new heights of artistry, opera education, and effect positive change in our community for decades to come. We're also very fortunate to have Susan A. Thompson as our executive campaign consultant, and I want to thank her for taking on the challenge of this very important and historic campaign for Manitoba Opera. As we celebrate our 50th season, we have lots to celebrate as we begin regular, fully staged productions since the beginning of the pandemic. Our fall production of La Cenerentola marks alumnus of our Digital Emerging Artist Program, Lizzie Hoyt's Manitoba Opera's main stage debut as Angelina. And you may recognize Lizzie as she recently performed at our gala concert in April. Our 50th anniversary concert will showcase great moments from the company's past 5 decades of performances and marks the return of the Manitoba Opera Chorus to the stage. Our spring performance of Cosi fan tutte will be reset in a pre-war 1930s Canadian rustic mountain resort. This reimagined comic opera about the give and take of relationships will surely be enjoyed by everyone. Our 50th anniversary season will be filled with events and celebrations under 3 key themes: celebrating the past, thanking the community, and looking to the future. And events to date are a new student ambassador initiative that will invite post-secondary music students to act as a liaison between the educational institution and Manitoba Opera, which helps them gain professional development opportunities and learn about the arts administration. And soon we will have a luncheon hosted by Mayor Brian Bowman, where he will present Manitoba Opera, a Community Organization Service Award. We'll have a tree planting initiative, a dinner to honor past chairs of Manitoba Opera, an archival project to preserve and celebrate our history, and of course, so much more. So please stay tuned. So as we look back, we've been through some of the most challenging times in history of the arts and in the world. So looking forward, Manitoba Opera has never been stronger or more secure, and I'm honored to be part of such a world-class organization. Thank you. So I will now call upon Larry DeRoche to present his director's report.
Thank you, Judith. And thank you all for coming this evening. So glad to see all of you after a couple of years, and welcome to those of you watching on the live stream. At last year's AGM, I ended my remarks by saying that our team had been battle tested by the first year of the pandemic, and I was confident that we could respond to whatever the pandemic threw at us this year. And I'm happy to report that indeed that was the case. The pandemic threw stuff at us and we responded. We've come through the second year of the pandemic financially sound, artistically important, and looking ahead to the future. While our approach to the first year of the pandemic focused on maintaining goodwill, organizational infrastructure, and continued service to the community, This past season was about managing the scale of the productions, embedding flexibility into our planning, and risk mitigation, not doing too much too soon. Having said that, we had a robust and busy year, and we were one of the few opera companies in Canada to produce a production for a live audience in the fall of 2021, specifically because we stayed small. And now I want to touch on a few highlights, and I'll try to do some editing on the fly because Judith stole some of my highlights, but that's okay. Yes, last August we held our second Digital Emerging Artists program. It's a 4-week online program designed to help young artists into the next stage of their careers. And aside from alumni appearing with us next season, there are also alumni from the program are also working at opera companies across Canada and the US in live performances and creating digital content. And of course, honoring Tanis with the Gail Asper Award last year was a highlight of the season. It was a lovely evening. So well deserved to honor Mrs. Richardson in that way, and the event raised more than $191,000 for our endowment campaign. So I'd like to thank Mrs. Richardson again for lending her name to that initiative. And yes, we returned to the stage last fall with a live audience for the first time since 2019 with 2 performances of The Telephone and La Voix Humaine. We performed under COVID-19 protocols with proof of vaccination and masks worn and socially distanced seating in the hall. The WSO was on the stage. And not just because she's here, it was in the script anyway, but I have to acknowledge Lara Chikevich in her wonderful performance as Elle. Is there anything that woman cannot do? And yes, as Judith said, La Cenerentola was to be staged in April, and we replaced it with a gala concert of opera favorites. And some extra music on the side. The program was enthusiastically received by both the live audiences and those watching on the live stream. But it was interesting to note that the live stream attendance was significantly lower than for the Sopranos of Winnipeg a year earlier, likely signaling the end to emergency response that that online programming and stream programming provided at the time. And yes, in an evening of highlights, I think highlights among highlights were Lizzie Hoyt and Catherine Daniel performing in their respective pieces. It was great to have them on the stage. And this season, in response to ongoing changes to COVID-19 health protocols, we presented a combination of in-person and virtual community engagement initiatives. These included lectures, a Zoom panel discussion, film screenings, a 4-episode series showcasing the digital emerging artists presented on Zoom, as Judith said. And one of the highlights for me was a panel discussion, Hung Up, Learning to Let Go of Damaging Relationships, in conjunction with The Telephone and La Voix Humaine. In this panel discussion, 4 specialists discussed how to facilitate communication in relationships and how to identify and disengage from unhealthy relationships, romantic or otherwise. And my wife was particularly happy to learn that my interest in this panel was purely academic. Throughout the pandemic, though the pandemic continued to affect student programming, we provided both in-person and online events. And as Judith noted, there was some first-time initiatives. We presented programs in both French and Tagalog, and through the creation of Opera Class Anywhere, we connected classrooms to deliver programs over video conferencing apps. We did live workshops in both Brandon and Winnipeg schools. 26 workshops in English and in French were presented in 14 schools as part of the I Love to Read month. And a video series, Opera Storytime, was also expanded to include translations of two of the stories, one in French and the other in Tagalog. And finally, after a year of many postponements, the rural tour of Al Simmons' one-person version of The Barber of Seville was presented into schools. It happened this June. Presented 8 shows in southwestern Manitoba, and for most of the students, this was the first time that a Manitoba opera production had toured to their schools. And on top of all of that, we also got our endowment campaign off the ground, creating the honorary committee, putting in place the co-chairs, the working cabinet, developing prospect lists, writing and publishing a case statement, and starting to cultivate and solicit gifts. And finally, our board work and organization building continues to be top-notch. Most of our board took part in a national workshop series called Equity and Inclusive Practices in Governance, offered by the Association for Opera in Canada. And we are working with Rhonda Forbes, who's actually here tonight, I see, of Spirited Ways Consulting, to look at our organizational practices to help us to be more inclusive to Indigenous communities. So we're looking forward to continue working with Rhonda and to be a more inclusive organization. Our achievements this year, as in any year, are only possible because we have a tremendously dedicated staff. And I know the staff feels supported by a thoughtful and caring board. And together, board and staff have brought Manitoba Opera to a position of respect and admiration among our peer organizations locally and nationally. And I want to thank everyone on our team for bringing their A game every day. Well, almost every day, maybe A- on some days. I particularly want to thank retiring board members Dr. Bill Pope and Leona Herzog for their exceptional contributions to the board over the past 7 years, completing full 7-year terms. They get an extra gold star for that. Beyond giving their time and financial resources, they were always engaged in issues at hand, and to top it all off, they are truly nice people. Bill and Leona, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and we'll miss you around the board Zoom table. And I'd like to welcome Ray Karasevich to the board. Ray, I'm looking forward to working with you over the coming season, and I know you'll fit into the organization well and bring your own insights into the company and our connection to the community. And finally, Judith, congratulations to you on your first year as chair of the Board of Trustees. Your warmth and generosity comes through with every encounter I have with you and that I see that you have with the public. And you're truly the right leader at the right time for Manitoba Opera. So let's take a minute tonight to mark our accomplishments of this past season as we set the table to celebrate our 50th anniversary season this year. And hopefully it'll be a time when we can come together often and pay tribute to what makes and has made this company so great. The people, the stories, and the music. Thank you.
Larry. I'd like to call upon Keith Sinclair to present the Governance Committee's report on the slate of nominees.
Thank you, Judith. In accordance with the bylaws amended in July 2019, the term of office for an elected trustee is 2 years following their election or until their successors are elected. No person may be elected as a trustee who has served as a trustee, whether by election or appointment, for each of the 7 years or more prior to the annual meeting of the members when their term would otherwise expire. Those board members returning to the Board of Trustees and do not require a vote for election to the board are returning for the second year of a second 2-year term are Paul Bruckweed. We have never done that before. Paul Brook-Weeds, Charlene Ord, and Grant Suderman. Sorry, Paul. Returning for the second year of a third 2-year term are Daniela Ignat, Maria Matosis, and Laura York. Nominees for trustees for 2022-23, nominated for the first year of a first 2-year term, Ray Karasevich. Nominated for the first year of a 2-year term are Terence Saka I know how to say this. Saka Hianas, Douglas, Flavia Fernandez Fabio, and Lena Maitland. And nomination for the first year of a third 2-year term are Judith Chambers, David Folk, and I should butcher my name. But Keith Sinclair. Nominated for a final 1-year term is Alex Robinson. So
And I guess there have been having been no other nominations received, I declare the nominations closed. And I'd ask for a motion to accept the nomination report and approve the election of directors.
I so move.
Keith? Joe? Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carried. We'd now like to recognize our retiring trustees, Bill Pope and Leona Herzog, with the presentation of a service recognition for their exemplary work on the Board of Trustees.
This is Bill's. So Bill, we'd like to make this presentation to you. So this is a, what would we call it, Darlene? Like not a plaque, but a
Commemorative poster?
a presentation, a poster of all of the shows that were presented during your term as a member of the board. All covers of all the programs that we've done.
Very fair.
So thank you so much for everything that you've done for Manitoba Opera.
You need a, can you turn around?
Let's do it after, and then you can get it.
And the same for Leona during your term, the poster framed with all of the office during your term. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And we'd like to now recognize Manitoba Opera staff member Liz Miller with a presentation of a service recognition for her 5 years of service at Manitoba
This is our new logo at once, So I think in the first,
featured podcast, I see you corrected it, which is the right thing to do.
I'm surprised that Liz is still here after 5 years, because I think it was like the second day that she started, we had a staff bonding experience, which was axe throwing at an axe throwing. Liz was wondering what she got herself into, but even a treasure is to have here. I'm going to get emotional. And you're just doing a fantastic job. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Liz. Thank you, Leona and Bill, so much for your service, and you will be missed, absolutely. So with that, is there any other further business to come before the meeting? There being no further business, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank
Here,
you
here.
for attending this evening, and we will take some photos afterwards.
Yeah. And coffee and dainties.
Coffee and dainties. Thank you, everyone, for coming.